Good afternoon, dear speakers, dear participants. Thank you very much for joining us for this expert discussion on judicial governance in transitional democracies. My name is Halyna Chyzhyk. I am leading Judicial Reform Department in Kyiv-based NGO Anti-Corruption Action Center. And today we are joined by the prominent experts, Ms. Hanna, the Honorary President of the Venice Commission of the Council of Europe, Sir Anthony Hooper, retired Judge of the Court of Appeal of England and Wales, and the Chairperson of the Public Council of International Experts, Ms. Nino Bakakuri, Justice of the Supreme Court of Georgia and a member of the Consultative Council of European Judges, Mr. Pavol Zilincik, member of Judicial Council of the Slovak Republic, and Mr. David Kosar, the head of the Judicial Studies Institute. So why are we focusing on judicial governance in transitional democracies? Because we believe that independent and accountable judicial councils is the key element for the success of the judicial reform aimed at restoring public trust in judiciary. The problem, however, is that the experience of Armenia, Georgia, Moldova, and finally Ukraine demonstrates inefficiency of the existing model of judicial governance for transitional democracies, which have not managed, unfortunately, to build independent judiciaries yet. Aiming at reforming its judiciaries, these countries implemented a standard envisioning the majority of judges elected by judges in judicial governance bodies. This standard indeed proved its efficiency in the mature democracies where justice systems were built in centuries and serves as a safeguard from any undue political influence over courts. However, without preceded dismissals of dependent and dishonest judges, their empowerment resulted in deepening corruption and mutual cover-ups inside the judiciary. Judicial reforms in Armenia, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine designed to achieve European standards failed because it effectively granted judges sole and somewhat untouchable control over judicial reform. At the same time, no effective measures to ensure judicial accountability and integrity were introduced. Unfortunately, dishonest judges started abusing European standards as a shield against any reasonable attempt aimed at ensuring the integrity and accountability of the judiciary. Therefore, the experience of transitional democracies proves that dishonest judges and not society benefit if judges are allowed to control themselves and thus to wall themselves into a fortress against meaningful reforms. So, how to ensure justice in a system where judges are dependent and controlled by politicians, oligarchs, and importantly, influential group of judges referred to as clans? With the aim to address this question, experts from Armenia, Bulgaria, Georgia, Moldova, Romania, and Ukraine united their efforts and prepared the document called Recommendations Towards Ensuring Accountable and Independent Judicial Governance in Transitional Democracies. Recommendations suggest in particular that when deciding on specific model of judicial governance, countries should take into consideration the history of judicial administration, judicial culture, and relationship between judges and political power. The most recommendation is that judiciary should be governed by independent authority, free from influence from legislative and executive branches, as well as politicians, oligarchs, and judicial clans that are independent, influential groups of judges. This independent authority, known as Council for Judiciary or Judicial Councils, which were established in almost all European countries, these authorities should be composed of independent members who meet the requirements of professionalism and criteria. And the most important recommendation is that the way to ensure the independence and trustworthiness of the members of the Council for Judiciary is to ensure that people who are appointed to judicial councils undergo public, transparent, and fair selection procedure. And Of course, it is also important to ensure that those people who assess future members of judicial councils, they should also be independent. And finally, last but not least, recommendations suggest that the panel assessing the integrity of the candidates applying for positions in judicial councils should be composed of independent, unbiased experts possessing outstanding professional and personal qualities. With the aim to foster public trust, national systems should encourage the involvement of civil society and international experts. So we have gathered here great experts to discuss whether these recommendations could be an effective solution and whether there is a possibility to incorporate it into European documents. Ms. Halyna Chyzhyk, welcome to the discussion. We are honored to have you with us today. And well, my question to you is the following. In July 2021, Ukrainian parliament adopted 2 laws launching the reform of the High Council of Justice and High Qualification Commission of Judges, because like in Ukraine, we have 2 independent judicial governance bodies. The laws adopted by the parliament suggest the involvement of independent international experts into the process of selection of members of these bodies. Importantly, international experts will have a decisive role in the process. The Venice Commission not only supported this approach, but emphasized on the importance of decisive role for international experts. At the same time, Ukraine is not unique, and countries in the region like Armenia, Georgia, and Moldova have the same problems. Judges lack independence and integrity. So what do you think of multiplying Ukrainian experience to the countries in the region? And given the importance of the issue, is it possible that Venice Commission adopts the recommendations on judicial governance in transitional democracies, which will be based on previous opinions the Venice Commission has issued? Ms. Suchocka, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am glad to take part in the discussion. It's not for the first time when I am taking part in discussing on the reform on judiciary in Ukraine. In different years, different epoch, political epoch, we are still discussing on reform of judiciary, how to create a judiciary exactly independent and how to guarantee the right to access to court, access to justice in the light of Article 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights. And today, I'm happy that I represent the Venice Commission because the Venice Commission is the body which since 30 years is looking for the best solution for different countries being in transition. Of course, we have to put the question how long we can be in transition, yes, but probably we are still using the name because when reform is not ended, it means that we are still in transition. And the judiciary is the exactly a big problem in many, many countries, how to deal with the issue to create really independent judiciary. I only would like to recall here that one of the first opinions of the Venice Commission, general opinion, which was not only concentrated on concrete country, was the opinion on the appointment of judiciary, appointment of judges, because it was one of the crucial issues. As you said in the beginning, in your opening words, that the countries starting to make a reform, they looked also for their own tradition. How they can be rooted in the old tradition and how to combine it with the European standards. Of course, sometimes it was very difficult to find the good historical tradition because it was only communist past when the courts and judiciary was strongly politicized. And then in such a situation, the problem of appointment of judges was one of the first and one of the crucial. We in the Venice Commission and all the countries looked for the best way how to do it. And then we had in many countries, we had our tradition when the Minister of Justice appointed judges. It was also the Polish tradition. And we try to follow the model, but then in between, we lost our, how to say, independent judiciary after Second World War and the beginning of 90s, when we would like to reestablish a new judge built on the principle of independence. The new institution has been established in some of European countries. It is the High Judicial Council. A strong discussion was around the High Judicial Council in the beginning of the Venice Commission, because I remember very well that in the beginning, the Venice Commission was not so strong in favor of creation the High Judicial Council in all countries. It was such a general point of view that when there are countries which are able to guarantee the independence of judiciary and impartial of judiciary by different way of appointment of judges, it is okay. But if not, then the council seemed to be the best solution. But then step by step, when the Venice Commission analyzed the different situation existing in different countries, finally the Venice Commission came to the conclusion that the High Council of Judiciary would be the best solution. And then the best solution, but not only to create the High Council of Judiciary, but to exactly give to the High Council of Judiciary the important role to be autonomous and to be also independent and non-partial. How it should be done? And here's the main question we are not able to answer in many countries till now. Yes, because first of all, we created a council, but then it was not enough, because it should be, the council should work, should exactly be a guarantee for independence of judiciary. But first of all, the council should be also independent and should be free of partiality. And as we know it very well, coming back to your question, because I tried to answer the first part of the question, that exactly the Venice Commission was able to make a report on the general issues which could serve as a kind of guideline for other countries. And we have to keep in mind that the Venice Commission never proposed unique model for all countries, because always the Venice Commission takes into account the specificity of different countries and, as you said, legal culture and tradition. But of course, the legal culture and tradition must be in the general framework to keep and to create independent judiciary. When the legal tradition is based on the politicization of judiciary, of course, in such a situation, it is impossible for the Venice Commission to accept such a solution. So for that reason, in the general report, Venice Commission is always looking for such possibilities, for such institution, which could be accepted by the countries and which are in line with the European, so-called European standards. And then what has happened in many countries? That first of all, the principle of independence of judiciary has been declared. And also the principle of independence of judiciary was introduced to the constitution as a general principle. Yes. But the principle has been, how to say, constitutionalized in the situation where judges were not independent and where it was a problem and it was a danger, threat, that the principle of independence would be taken as a kind of personal privilege, not as an important instrument to guarantee independence and impartiality of judiciary as such, but as a personal privilege. And now I think that what we can hear, what we have the discussion in different countries, it's always the discussion concerning the, how to say, a wrong definition of the principle of independence, because the principle of independence should exactly be for making the justice fair and exactly justice fair in the first rank, and then it should exactly be seen by others that it is fair justice. It is also very important. So the problem of appointment, and now in Ukrainian case, there were several different drafts and proposals how to organize High Council of Judiciary. High Council of Judiciary was introduced to the constitution, but then it was completely different situation out of the constitution. Yes, on the level of laws. The specific roles had been played by High Qualification Commission of Judiciary. Then it was said that it is not in conformity with the constitution, etc., etc. But now we are back with the restitution of the High Qualification Commission. Why? Because High Council of Judiciary didn't play its role. But one of the main tasks in the draft proposed by President Zilincik last year and in the Venice Commission opinions is how to clean, how to restore the how to restore the how to say good name of judiciary. In which way? And one of the issue it was the proposal to create such a body. First, in Ukrainian system, the body which is the Ethics Council, which could propose the candidates to the High Council of Judiciary. And the body is composed also with participants of international experts. And here's the open discussion. We had the discussion very often in many places. Is it acceptable in the light of the constitution that such expert could be in the body created in the light of Ukrainian law? The Venice Commission strongly, as you said, strongly supported the idea of international experts, but of course under certain conditions, that the body is only, how to say, established for no short period of time, it is 6 years, and then that the members are in their personal capacity, international experts as well as the national members of the body, and they had to look for consensus. In the case when there is no consensus, the proposals by law has been done, then in such a case the voice of international experts prevail. But in the opinion of the Venice Commission, it is a just solution, and because the main, as we said, the main goal is to create exactly non-corrupted judiciary, which is important because having corrupted judiciary is for nothing. Then we'll have a corrupted judiciary with the judges having privilege of being, how to say, untouchable and independent, but then there will be no real justice in the country. So here's the main problem. And as we can say, because you asked the question, what do you think of multiplying the Ukrainian experience to countries in the region? I think that the Venice Commission probably the first proposed such a solution in case of Armenia and also in other countries. So it is a common opinion of the Venice Commission, yes, to have international experts in different bodies in different countries, but as I said, clearly under clear and very tough conditions. And then I can say that exactly the experience the Venice Commission had analyzing the situation in different countries, probably I am even sure that it will be possible to prepare such a general opinion with a certain guidelines concerning the recommending the judicial governments in transitional democracies, because we have partially such a guidelines, as I said, in our first report on appointment of judges, and then in the second report on the independence of judiciary. Yes, there are the two crucial general reports where are included general principles concerning judiciary. So I am how to say positive in this case, and I think that probably it will be even necessary to give answer to many questions concerning especially the role of international experts in the body. So I think that probably my time is over, and I give the floor to you and others. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this brilliant intervention. You're just like right in time, and I cannot agree with you more. I do believe that like this guideline from the Venice Commission will be very helpful and will make it easier for some other countries in the region who like are now looking for the solutions, who have not started implementing the reform, and having this guideline will make it easier for them to convince their governments which are opposing this kind of reform that it is important to do so, because even like European institutions like the Venice Commission supports this approach. And we are having with us today brilliant Sir Anthony Hooper. In 2018, Sir Anthony came to Ukraine to work in the Public Council of International Experts, a new body that was established to assess the integrity of future members of the High Anti-Corruption Court in Ukraine. Sir Anthony, could you please share with us your reflections on your experience in the selection of judges of the High Anti-Corruption Court? Why is the involvement of international experts is so important? Do you support the idea of multiplying this experience to judicial governance reform in countries where, unfortunately, there are no independent judiciaries yet? The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Halyna. Let me answer the third question first. I have an emphatic yes. I do thoroughly believe in the idea of multiplying what is now really the Ukrainian experience and using it in other countries. Let me go to your first question about the Public Council of International Experts, because I think it provides a very good model for what is going to be happening in the future. Let me say this about the Public Council. We 40 of the 113 candidates for the High Anti-Corruption Court were prevented from going forward in the competition because of a reasonable doubt about their integrity and or practical skills. Thus, they were eliminated from the competition, and I do not believe that that would have happened but for the role of the Public Council of International Experts. Crucial was the veto. 3 members of the Public Council had to vote that a candidate was compliant, and without those 3 votes, the candidate no longer took any part in the competition. Crucial to the success of the Public Council was the role of the Secretariat, which Halyna played a very important part. You cannot do this work unless you have a team of young lawyers who are ready to delve into the asset declarations, the register of powers of attorney. For some reason which I never understood, Ukrainian judges seem to love using powers of attorney to give each other powers over their own property. This secretariat, coupled with civil society and the very helpful interventions of NABU in some of the cases, made sure, I think, that we did our work properly. Halyna's already mentioned reasonable doubt. You mentioned it in your report. That to me is absolutely crucial. Before we came along, it seemed to me, looking at what had happened in the past, that unless you proved that someone was non-compliant with the criteria of integrity, then they went forward. Well, that's next to impossible to do. It's very difficult even in a criminal context to do it, but outside the criminal context and without the powers that criminal prosecutors have, it's next to impossible. And so we adopted right from the start this very low threshold. Is there a reasonable doubt about the compliance? And I'm very happy to say that that was adopted by the HQCJ without any difficulty. And that, I think, will be the future for Ukraine. On any appointments to new courts, I think the reasonable doubt test will be applied. The final technicality is that what we introduced, which is crucial, is the written question. It is no point having an interview with a candidate for an appointment or for a judge that's being re-evaluated, simply to throw the issues to him or her at the final interview. The written questions, which we learnt to draft in the PCIe with the Secretariat and the members working together, were very detailed questions which required the candidate to give significant detail. And we made a very important rule right from the outset that if the candidate didn't produce material at that stage, they could not suddenly produce the material at the interview. So I think that, to me, was a very important part of our work. Why was it so important? Well, first of all, it succeeded. 40 out of 113, that's not bad going. Number two, public trust. It seems to me that the involvement in international experts must, I think, help public trust in the body itself. And in countries, even Ukraine, which has a very substantial population, the judges know each other. There was one judge, I remember, it was clear that everyone knew him and thought he was a wonderful person. We had reasonable doubts about it when you actually looked at him. And if you take a country like Georgia with a population of 2 to 3 million, it's even more likely that there will be too much, what's the word what I'm looking for, too much knowledge, too much friendship between everyone. So I'm a great believer in the Public Council of International Experts and international panels. The future, I see it as a template for reform. There's two vital reforms that are needed in transitional democracies. Number one is the reform of the Judicial Council, the High Council of Justice, what Hanna referred to as the Council of the Judiciary, whatever you call it, let's call it, I'll use the word Judicial Council. That needs reforming. It needs reforming because it does two crucial things. It does appointments and it does discipline. And both those things need to be done properly, and they're not being done properly at the moment. Again, why do I say that? Because we know in so many countries that the judges are corrupt in the sense of financially corrupt, or alternatively, they're corrupt in the sense that they lack independence. And if that is the situation, which seems to be the case, then the body responsible for that situation must be the Judicial Council. It must be responsible because it hasn't made the right appointments and hasn't used its powers of discipline properly. So we need to reform that body. And I think the Ukrainian approach, where you cannot become a member of the Judicial Council, in case of Ukraine, split into two separate bodies, but nonetheless, you can't become unless you your integrity, you've been found by by a body, including 3 international experts, to be compliant with the criteria of integrity and professional competence. So that's the first thing we need to do. The second thing, I think, in all of the countries, probably now need a judicial reevaluation, particularly for senior judges in Supreme Courts, presidents of courts, presidents of Court of Appeal, because that's where the problem lies. It may not be necessary to do all the judges because that leads to a great deal of difficulty. So I would like to see a new body which is vetoing, is examining candidates for the Judicial Council, and then let the Judicial Council do its job properly. And I do think it may be necessary to rethink the number of judges who are on the Judicial Council It has always seemed strange to me that judges elect judges to make appointments and do discipline. If a judge doesn't like change, why on earth would he ever vote for a judge on the High Council, on the Judicial Council, who wants to change things? So it's not designed to work. I think I've done my 10 minutes. I better shut up. Halyna, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Anthony. In fact, you still have 2 minutes left, but thank you for your great remarks. And I can definitely say that the involvement of international experts for the establishment of the High Anti-Corruption Court in Ukraine was a game changer, because the judicial reform has already started. It was already implemented in Ukraine when this court was established. And before the High Anti-Corruption Court selection, there was a selection for the Supreme Court judges. And unfortunately, the majority of questionable candidates, they made through the competition, and that was the problem. So, we find this unique solution, and the experience of the anti-corruption courts proves that this experience is successful. So we do believe that it should be multiplied to the reforms of judicial governance. And frankly speaking, we were very lucky to have you and other experts here in Ukraine, because you are those who ensured that High Anti-Corruption Court in Ukraine is a different court. And it has been working for 2 years already, and it has already demonstrated the quality of its decisions. We could not imagine a situation when a judge who takes bribes go to prison, but this is now Ukrainian reality. There are a lot of decisions of the anti-corruption court imprisoning judges who are corrupt. So I believe that it was worth it. It was very hard to advocate for the involvement of international experts, but now I believe that this, as you said, this is what will happen in the future, not only in Ukraine, but in the region. So thank you very much for your speech and what you did here in Ukraine, and what I believe you will do in future. And now I want to give the floor to Ms. Nino Bakakuri, who is not only the judge of the Supreme Court in Georgia, but is also a member of very important institution in Europe, Consultative Council of European Judges. Ms. Bakakuri, what are your thoughts on the idea of involving international experts outside judiciary to selection of judicial governance as a solution presented in recommendations prepared by experts? I know, in fact, that the Council of European Judges is now working on the document regarding judicial governance. Does the document reflect on the current situation in transitional democracies and recent developments, in particular in Ukraine? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Halyna. Thank you for this invitation in this very interesting discussion on a very important subject, especially for transitional democracies. I am directly from the plenary meeting of the Consultative Council of European Judges, which has just finished a few hours ago. And we adopted Opinion 24. As you mentioned, it is exactly on the subject of our today's discussion. It is about the evolution of the councils for the judiciary and their role in the independent and impartial judicial system. As you already know, probably CCJA adopted its first opinion regarding this subject in 2007. This is opinion number 10, which is named the Council for the Judiciary at the Service of Society, which is a core document containing those minimum principles and standards that were set by consensus by 47 judges from Council of Europe member states. Magna Carta of Judges and international standards developed, for example, by Venice Commission, have also stressed the importance of such independent councils for governing the judiciary over the years. And as we all know, since that time, many countries who have not had councils before have introduced or strengthened such independent institutions for the governance of the judiciary. However, developments that in recent years have challenged the principles and standards expressed in these documents take place. So these developments made CCJ to think that it was important on one side to reaffirm the principles expressed in opinion number 10, and on the other side, were necessary to complement them in the light of recent political events, undermining judicial institutions and the case law of the European Court of Human Rights. That's why CCJ decided to draft a new opinion this year, and this is the first instance when CCJ takes the same issue for the new opinion. However, during the drafting process, the working group of CCJ, which I am also part of, noted from the replies of various states, there was a questionnaire sent to the member states to reply. So we noted from those replies that there was a great diversity among member states, not only in relation to the organization of the councils. Some countries still don't have councils at all, but also in relation to their composition and responsibilities. Taking into account this diversity, it was quite challenging process to reach consensus regarding matters that are related especially to election, composition, and responsibilities of such institutions. As regards the particular subject of our interest, you might notice from opinion number 10 that already at that time in 2007, there were considerable concerns regarding existence of possible self-interest, self-protection, and cronyism in relation to formation and activities of the councils. In opinion number 10, CCJ states that in order to avoid the perception of self-interest, self-protection, and cronyism, and to reflect the different viewpoints within the society, the Council for the Judiciary should have a mixed composition with a substantial majority of judges, even if certain specific tasks should be held in reserve to an all-judge panel. The Council for the Judiciary may also be exclusively composed of judges. As we see at that time, CCJ was in favor of a council which would be composed by majority of judges or even exclusively by judges. But in its new opinion 24, CCJ takes more nuanced view on this subject, and especially in paragraph, but it is important to notice that in paragraph 30 of the new text, which will be, I think it's not published, I checked, it's not published yet, but probably it will be published tomorrow and you will have the possibility to explore it. So in paragraph 30, CCJ expressed again that it is in favor that council is composed by majority of judges elected by their peers. Because despite the fact that there are problems in many countries, especially in countries like Georgia, Armenia, Ukraine, and some other countries, still I think the general approach of most of the members of the Council of Europe is still firm on this subject, and this opinion is that a majority of judges should be part of the Council for the Judiciary, and they should be elected by their peers. But interesting in the new opinion is that unlike the other opinion of 2007, in new opinion, there is also an emphasis about risk of corporatism. And it is expressed in paragraph 29, which recommends that non-judicial members, also possibly including lay persons who are not legal professionals, should also be in the composition of the councils for the judiciary. And exactly this is related, and the CCJE says that they should be also involved in the decisions about appointment of judges in particular, because there is a risk of corporatism. In paragraph 20, CCJ emphasizes that the lay members shall be involved in decisions regarding the appointment of judges as a safeguard against cronyism and cloning among judges. In addition, in paragraph 31, CCJ states that an election by parliament of non-judicial members is more acceptable. And as an alternative, it also recognizes that an election of the members by bar associations and NGOs is also a possibility, which I think is different, is a shift from the opinion in number 10, which was drafted in a different wording. But what I find also most interesting in opinion 24 is paragraph 34, where CCJ states that selection process, including possible campaign by candidates, should be transparent and ensure that the candidates' qualification, especially their impartiality and integrity, are ascertained. Vacancies should be advertised publicly and equal opportunities guaranteed to support a diverse group of independent candidates. I think that these requirements apply not only to the election of the non-judge members, but first of all, and most importantly, to the election of the judge members. Thus, any initiative towards setting up the law, setting up in the law the mechanisms and procedures that aim to make this process of election of judge members of the council more public, transparent, and fair, including how the judge candidates shall be nominated, or by whom, or whether there can be a panel which can evaluate candidates that are nominated, is very important and fits to this idea which is expressed in the opinion of CCJE. I am personally in favor to make this process more transparent, even if final word is for the judges. It will be still possible to set up a procedure that ensures that some candidate judges be nominated not only by their peers, but also by some other institutions, or evaluated by panel of experts before election by their peers. So we can maintain this principle that judges are elected by their peers, but we can make the procedure more transparent and more fair in a way to involve some outside professionals. Will it be non-governmental organizations or bar associations, or a panel of international experts, either to nominate candidates, acting judges as candidates, or to evaluate those candidates who will be nominated by their peers, and before judges make a final decision that they have this in front of them. Georgian experience especially proves this quite well. I think the main problem which causes many questions regarding election process of judge candidates in the council is that we don't have any regulation in law which says how candidates should be so that there is any special procedure to evaluate candidates, because any judge can nominate a candidate, and usually this is done at the conference without any prior information or any possibility for the candidates to present themselves and for the society to know about them more. So I think I take too much time. So let me finish at this stage, and if there will be any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Like, it was very interesting for all of us, I guess, to hear what is in your opinion is about. We are looking forward to the publication of this new opinion. And it is good to hear that Consultative Council of European Judges becomes more open to and emphasizes on the importance of including non-judicial members to the judicial councils. I have, in fact, one small follow-up question to you. Do you think that there is a field for further cooperation and dialogue between members of the council and those experts who prepared these recommendations?
I think that, well, even if CCJ is composed solely by judges, who are appointed by their states, CCJ has many institutions that have observer status. And anytime when there is draft prepared for adoption as an opinion at the plenary meeting, before the plenary meeting, the observer organizations have a chance to submit their proposals and recommendations and notes regarding this draft. And this is actually discussed at the plenary meeting, and all of the proposals are considered and answered. So there is a discussion, quite intense discussion in relation to proposals. But for those organizations that don't have such status, I think it is also very much possible to participate in this process through judges who are members of the CCJ. Personally, I would be always willing and happy to present opinion of any organization or group which thinks that it is important to share certain issues and concerns with the council.
I see.
At this stage, it's pity that at this stage there was a coincidence in time. And I did not have possibility to offer you this.
But I believe that there will be possibilities in future, as we only started advocating for the adoption of these recommendations.
I can already tell you that the next opinion of the council that we will work next year will be about freedom of expression of judges. So I think this is very important subject and very, very crucial subject also for our countries. So I expect that there will be suggestions also from the experts.
Thank you very much for sharing all that information with us. So we've been talking a lot about judicial councils and the importance to ensure their integrity, accountability, and independence of the members of judicial councils. And we are lucky to have here today the actual member of Judicial Council. This is Mr. Pavol Zilincik, member of Judicial Council of the Slovak Republic. So Pavol, what do you think of these recommendations? Like, do you support this solution? And if so, how you see the further promotion and implementation of these recommendations in the countries in transition? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Halyna. Thank you for inviting me. It's an extremely interesting and important discussion. I was hoping this discussion will take place much earlier, but I'm happy, I mean, like 20 years ago, when the super independent institutional pyramid fortress of judicial independence, as David Kosar and Michal Bobek call it, was established in Slovakia to make our way to European Union. Unfortunately, the focus was only on independence. The accountability component was entirely missing. We didn't think about culture, and we ended up badly. The Slovakia can serve as something between cautionary tale and an example of real disaster when it comes to judicial reform. If there is a checklist of possible abuses the Judicial Council can make, or wrongdoings the Judicial Council can do to Judiciary, I think we did it all in Slovakia. There were double standards in disciplining judges who were not loyal, and very mild or no punishment for those judges who are part of the system of our people. In some countries they call it clan. In our country it was a system of naši ľudia, our people. Loyalty-based financial bonuses. In some cases, financial bonuses exceeded the actual salary of a judge. In other judges got nothing or 50 euros. Promotion, selection, nepotism, this all was here, including delivering decision as a form of gratitude for being selected as a judge, or libel lawsuits against media who were writing about the wrongdoings within the judiciary or within the Judicial Council, which were then decided by judges in a way which pleased the Judicial Council. So all these symptoms of corrupt judiciary were present here. Unfortunately, it takes too many years to fix it. It's year 2021. We established this Judicial Council in 2001. So 20 years after our attempt, coincidentally, I think, we have the highest number of judges prosecuted for corruption. In 2019 and 20, we had a huge corruption case here, and many judges were involved in criminal activities. The number of prosecuted judges is now, I think, 20 or 21. Some pled guilty already and described how the system worked. So really, if I can stress something from the recommendations, all the initial points, stressing the importance of accountability, super important. Also, point 5, which stresses the need for public, transparent, and fair selection procedure, extremely important. The more open is the selection process, the more difficult is to get in for people who shouldn't be there. So all these recommendations I fully support. I'm very happy that I see such a strong emphasis on culture, judicial culture, traditions. I would even go further and specifically name the need to evaluate the professional standards, the ethics, and also power within the judicial corps. Because when Judicial Council was established in Slovakia, you need some political work behind the scenes in order to get your expected result or favorable results. And who was able to do this small political work, these discussions, these lists of preferable candidates, this lobbying? Those judges who were the former members of the Communist Party, because they already had the political experience. The new judges, they were like naive, and they were hoping that their voting for the fair and honest candidate will produce the expected results. They were, of course, not that successful. So culture, traditions, professional standards, ethics, and also power, because Of course, we do have many fair and honest judges in Slovakia. However, the real power was in the hands of the corrupt ones. And if these guys get the institutional independence, then we have a tragedy. So if I would recommend for future consideration, future elaboration, some possible avenues, I would start working on methodology, how to evaluate the cultural components of the judicial corps. And my proposal would be to go through basically 3 types of questions. First, what is considered to be okay in the judiciary? For example, when it comes to relationships between judges and attorneys, judges and parties. Sometimes you would be surprised that in some countries, a relationship which is quite normal here in Slovakia would be perceived as unimaginable, unacceptable. So that would be my first methodological component. Second, what is considered to be okay when it comes to internal communication within the court, even between judges as peers or between the court president and a judge? Because sometimes the influence, the pressure, has a blatant form, and sometimes it's so innocent that you don't even know what is going on during the discussion, for example, with your superior or the president of the court. Sometimes the subtle suggestions how a certain case should be dealt with don't have a form of blatant corruption. But if judges themselves can say that they ever experienced a communication which they didn't feel okay, which they were not comfortable with, it's an important component of understanding what is considered to be okay, what is the actual legal culture here. And the third is, of course, public trust. And when this evaluation would come to a conclusion that the judicial corps have probably some way ahead to evolve to a system where unacceptable behavior would be mutually understood as unacceptable, then we can think about granting this great power of institutional independence to Judicial Council, however it is composed. I am very happy to respond to any questions if I wasn't clear. And now my final point, if I still have some time. So the first 3 points in your recommendations, I can't find anything I would improve. It's brilliant. When it comes to those which define the Judicial Council, the procedure, how to prevent cronyism, corporativism in the council, the recommendations basically include 2 possible institutions. One is an NGO panel, like the Public Integrity Council was in Ukraine, and the second one is the Public Council of International Experts. I'm thinking about these 2 a lot. I was absolutely amazed by the success you made in Ukraine with these 2 institutions. I think that it would be quite difficult to copy and paste these to Slovakia, because I think that the ethos of post-Maidan Ukraine is super specific. And for example, in Slovakia, there is a widespread distrust towards NGOs and also towards international experts. And the time and effort necessary to incorporate these into legislation would be extremely high. So I need to think more what are the alternatives for countries where it is very difficult to introduce such a powerful position for NGOs or international experts. And when thinking about an answer to this question, if I was asked to give a recommendation to institutions which prepared all this soft law, I would probably propose not to pressure so much on creating the Judicial Council as the only one and only guarantee of judicial independence and accountability. I think every country needs some time to evaluate who is inside the system before we grant them this level of power. If there is a Judicial Council, if it is going to be created, then these panels and the role of NGOs, civil society, and international experts, it's definitely one of possible avenues how to have a successful outcome. But I would consider both. I wouldn't go just the way we need a Judicial Council and we need this scrutiny of candidates before. I would also offer an alternative not to have the council as such, if the situation in the country doesn't allow for an effective work of the panels as such. And my last point is, in addition to all this, I would really recommend to work on the methodology, how to measure the culture within legal professions, because however we will create the institutions, if we don't know who is inside and what is considered to be okay, we can end up badly. I think this is all from me for now, and I'm very happy to respond to any question you might have.
Great, thank you very much for these remarks and for the recommendations, which I find very practical, and we will definitely try to implement it in Ukraine. And especially thank you very much for mentioning Communist Party, giving it as an example, because, well, I was a member of the Public Integrity Council, and in 2017, when we were involved in assessing the integrity of the candidates who applied for the Supreme Court positions, we paid attention to those candidates who were members of the Communist Party, and no one understood us. We were questioned, why you are paying attention, why are you blaming people for being members of the Communist Party? So it was very hard for us to explain that this is important, because this tells something about these people, about their loyalty to their colleagues, about how they can be resistant to some pressure. But of course, unfortunately, High Qualification Commission of Judges, which was in charge of their decisions, of course, ignored our concerns regarding this. And this is why we do not have the majority of independent judges in the Supreme Court. So after we reform judicial governance bodies, I believe that we will look for the solution. What should we do? How to clean the Supreme Court? But well, step by step. And now I'm happy to give the floor to our last, but very important speaker, Mr. David Kosar, who actually is one who was the first who backed the idea that majority of judges elected by judges is not good enough, with comprehensive studies. So, David, please share with us your thoughts on the recommendations, because we consider it as a solution to the problems you've been talking for years. So what do you think, whether these recommendations is a solution to the problem, and how do you see the further promotion and implementation of these recommendations?
Thank you very much, Halyna. Just double checking whether you can hear me. Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's my utmost pleasure. It's also great to see the recommendations that are really based on real world problems and trying, to tackle them through innovative solutions. So as to the issues that are relevant, I wrote 6 of them, or grouped them in 6 issues I would like to share with you regarding the recommendations. In general, I think this goes into the right direction. I provided my feedback earlier on, so much of my thoughts have been already incorporated in one or another way. But still, if I may, I would raise those, 6 points. First of all, a lot of the discussion is centered on judicial councils, which is, of course, understandable given the countries we are talking about and given the importance of judicial councils. But we should not forget, and I'm aware that, for instance, ECJE is not forgotten about that there are also other actors within judicial governance, apart from politicians, Ministry of Justice, and apart from the Judicial Council. For instance, court presidents, Judicial Appointments Commission, and special disciplining panels, because not in all countries, disciplining is within the pouvoir of judicial councils. I know that there is CCGE opinion number 19 on court presidents and so forth, but it would be good to discuss it within the recommendations as well, because in my opinion, it's, for instance, clear that court presidents should not sit on the Judicial Council, and the Chief Justice should not be a chairman of the Judicial Council, because it concentrates too much power, and we have learned badly from lessons in some countries where this was the case. So it's one potential suggestion. The second one is that I somehow would perhaps still a little bit tone down some of the recommendations. I'm considered a straight shooter in academic circles, but still it seems to me that if you want to appeal to a broader set of countries, including, for instance, those who are EU members, like, you have Romanian, experts involved in, but also to the Slovaks, Poles, Czechs, Hungarians, but also perhaps, be ambitious to Spaniards as well. I mean, Spanish Judicial Council is very politicized and facing a lot of problems as well. Then probably it's tricky to say at the very beginning that, basically majority of judges elected by judges or judicial councils as such, in many cases led to empowering dishonest independent judges, because you will face immediate backlash, because Spanish judges would, not like to hear that most of them or many of them are actually dishonest and independent. So I would, tone it down perhaps to some members or something like that, or some countries, just be a bit more careful. The third thing, and it's related, sometimes we have the tendency in Central and Eastern Europe to move from one extreme to another. And in my opinion, it never leads to good results. So we moved from, Ministry of Justice model to the exact, opposite to the other extreme, to this super independent Judicial Council governed by judges. And now we are somehow trying to move back somewhere in the middle and bring in non-judges and non-lawyers, which I sincerely appreciate. But I would just to flag this out. I talked to some, Georgian colleagues this week, and they, for instance, suggest that they want to select powerful court presidents by lottery for a short term. I mean, sounds like a great idea, but I think it's just going from one extreme to another, and might get tricky and might not be accepted as legitimate in a given setting. And I would like to hear what, for instance, our Georgian colleague, Bakakuri, thinks about that proposal brought by a group of independent lawyers. So it was my third comment. Then the fourth issue is, and here I would be echoing Pavol's talk, is that we need to look at informal institutions and constitutional conventions. I'm not sure whether we can measure a judicial culture easily, that it's all a daunting task, but at least it would be great to identify the constitutional conventions, the narratives, and informal let's say, institutions and formal rules that are so important in the judiciary. And there is a recent piece by Scott Stevenson, I think in Oxford Journal of Legal Studies. It shows that even in Commonwealth countries, constitutional conventions governing the judiciary are super important. Let's think about the Concordat between the UK Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. There are all sorts of issues that are super interesting, and it's, I would say, even more important in Central and Eastern Europe. And you know the stuff. I mean, you are there. You have been, within the system for decades. So it would be great to point this out. Then, just from the scholarly point of view, I think, and it's something we are working on as well, I think it would be great if you can connect your recommendations to the most recent literature on separation of powers, especially on the so-called new fourth branch stuff written by Mark Tashnet and Tarun Khaitan and others, because it's very much going into the direction you are heading, basically meaning that there is a fourth branch, the integrity branch, guarantor branch, or whatever you call it, that includes anti-corruption bodies, data protection bodies, national banks, and potentially judicial councils as well. But it requires a novel framing of judicial councils outside of the standard three-branch framework. Then my sixth issue I would like to mention, or sixth suggestion, is that you are mentioning that, in the introduction, the preamble, that, you need to fulfill people's long-awaited request for justice. I think, it's perhaps, too vague a term, and we need to perhaps acknowledge that there is a sort of trade-off between the rule of law values, such as, independence, impartiality on the one hand, and new public management values, such as, accountability, transparency, efficiency, and so forth. But I think that there is also a third set of values concerning diversity. And here I would probably move to my second part, which is how to sell the recommendations in the future. I think if you want to sell it to the Council of Europe, potentially also to EU leadership, one issue that I'm really missing is exactly the diversity, and especially the gender diversity issue in the recommendations, because it's a big deal in West Europe and we often forget it. In Central and Eastern Europe, how central it is. And I think that a lot of talk, and Sir Anthony will correct me if I'm wrong, in the UK is basically about a triad: independence, accountability, diversity. And this is missing here. Of course, the gender representation on courts in post-communist setting is super complicated and different than in the West. We often have majority of female judges on the bench, but quite often they are not in the positions of power and so forth. That's a lot of interesting talk. I don't want to enter that, but it would be extremely illuminating for the Western audience. The second suggestion is try to connect it to EU law scholarship as well. There's a growing case law of the Court of Justice on judicial independence and the rule of law. And if the Court of Justice confirms or supports the Council of Europe standards, including majority of judges elected by majority of judges, that will be even more difficult to undo or to modify these standards, because Court of Justice, has far more leverage over its member states. That, for instance, the Strasbourg Court, it's acting much more quickly and so forth. So it's important to communicate also with this. And in this regard, I'm at the FIDE Congress in The Hague right now, so I'll do my best to help with this. So I'm talking tomorrow at the tomorrow session, and I will definitely try to mention your recommendations over here so that people read them and understand what's going on in Central and Eastern Europe. So I will stop here. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to the further discussion.
Thank you very much, David, for your, I would say, advanced recommendations. I believe that we will work together with colleagues on amending the document we prepare, and especially thank you very much for suggesting your help. I will definitely use it. So thank you very much. And now we are still have 15 minutes left for our follow-up discussion. So I encourage our participants here in Zoom to ask your questions either by raising your hands or by using chat. So please, you're welcome. If I believe that you do have a lot of questions to our distinguished speakers. So now you have an opportunity to do this, since we still have some time. So I see that we have hands raised. So I give the floor to Kaha Tsikarishvili, our colleague from Georgia. Kaha, please go on.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Kaha Tsikarishvili. I am I'm a member of a group of independent lawyers here in Georgia. We are struggling with the same problem that you talked about for many years now in Georgia, and everything which is in the recommendation, everything is very critical for us, and it is an honor to be here and discuss with you because there's such a great experience in this community and there's such a wide representation here today. Let me just ask a number of questions, and particularly in the context of transitional countries. Sorry. Okay. My first question about the judicial councils in the transitional democracies is a question which is about chicken and eggs. This famous question about which comes the first, the chicken or the egg. So the question is, when we say that the judges should be selected by the Judicial Council, judges should be selected by independent Judicial Council, and then we say the Judicial Council should be elected from the judges. So what is the right way of doing it? In the countries which do not have Judicial Councils, how they started, how do they start Judicial Council? Because if you don't have Judicial Council, and then how do you elect judges? And if you don't have judges elected by the Judicial Council, then how do you elect Judicial Council? The reason I'm asking also in the Georgian context, because creating judicial self-government in the country which does not have high integrity in the judiciary, maybe it is dangerous, and maybe it was dangerous for Georgia to create a judicial self-government when we did not have integrity among judges. So maybe this was a dangerous path. And this is my first question. The second question is about the independence of the Judicial Council. So the question is, independence from what? And particularly, I'm talking about independence from the judges, independence from the judges themselves. And the reason I am asking is that, the Parliament cannot be independent from the voters, because in the country, in a democracy, the Parliament is elected by the citizens, by the voters, and the Parliament cannot be independent from the citizens, right? This is clear. And in the judiciary, when the Judicial Council is elected from the judges, of course there is a risk that the Judicial Council will become a bastion, a fortress of corporate demand, a corporate demand. And what was the corporate demand here in Georgia in 2013 when we made a new Judicial Council? The corporate demand was that judges wanted reappointment. Judges wanted reappointment. Every judge wanted reappointment. That was the corporate demand. We don't care about the independence of the council. We care about our reappointment. We don't want our prosecution. Judges did not want disciplinary prosecution because of the violations in the previous regime. So the corporate demand was absence of any disciplinary prosecution. Therefore, after 2013, we have received a corporate judicial council which has carried out the corporate demand of the judges to reappoint the judges and to factually abolish disciplinary prosecution in the judiciary. Because after 2013, practically we don't have disciplinary prosecution. It's not working. You know, approximately only 10 judges have been punished, and only for reprimand, for very light disciplinary sanctions. So the disciplinary system is not working in Georgia. Practically, it's not working. Okay, this is a second question. I will just go very quickly. When the next question is about.
I'm sorry, Kaha, I'm not sure that we will have enough
just
time.
one more and that's finish. One more and I finish. About the accountability. One more question about this accountability, because in Georgian constitution says the Judiciary Council is accountable before Conference of Judges. So this is like a closing in itself. You know, to whom is the judiciary accountable? To itself. To the judges are accountable to themselves. That's it. That's what the Constitution says. So, okay, thank you very much. These was my questions, and I'm sorry I took time.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you very much for your very comprehensive questions. So I'm now asking Sir Anthony Hooper to address your first question, and asking our experts to think on the other two questions of yours.
I'm going to answer the first question by using your chicken and egg analogy. I think we need a panel that looks at the eggs to make sure they're going to be good chickens. And only if they can be good chickens can the judges and others vote to put them on the Judiciary Council. That's my answer. Examine the eggs.
Very interesting. Very.
Thank you very much for this brilliant answer. So, dear experts, who'd like to address other two questions Kaha raised here? Kaha, could you please remind us, just briefly?
I raised my hand.
I think Hanna.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Please, Mr. Chyzhyk, please.
Yes, exactly. I listen with great attention your voice, because I remember our discussion in Poland in the beginning, because Poland was the first country who established the High Council of Judiciary, Council of Judiciary. It was in December 1989, and there was exactly a strong discussion between proponents of the institution and opponents of the institution. We are of the opinion then, I remember it very well, because at that time I was in Parliament and I always was a rapporteur to the amendments to the Constitution concerning also High Council of Judiciary. But we looked for the system which would be completely different than the system existing in Poland in communist time. But as I said at the opening speech, we also looked for our tradition. And in our tradition, the role of Minister of Justice and the appointment of judges was very strong. But then we created the High Council of Judiciary. And I can tell you that in time when I was a Minister of Justice, it was a permanent tension between Minister of Justice and the High Council of Judiciary, because it was exactly such a battle on power, who would be stronger in the system. We decided to have a very balanced High Council of Judiciary. There were also a Minister of Justice, a member of the High Council, president of the administrative court, president of the Supreme Court, and two members from parliament and from Senate, elected by Senate and parliament. Because we expected then in such a balanced composition, there will be possible to find a solution. Now, as you know, the High Council of Judiciary is much more politicized because the judges, they were elected by their peers, are now elected by the parliament. And it is from the kind of corporatism, we moved to the politicization of the High Council of Judiciary. So for that reason, it is exactly very difficult to give such a final, how to say, answer exactly how and how in which way we can create the High Council of Judiciary. The experience in given country should be also taken into account. We know such a countries, and we have such a countries in Central Eastern Europe, like for example, Bulgaria. They change always the idea. First of all, the council composed only from judges. Then they change, no, it must be wider composition. Then prosecutors also member of the High Council. Then two different councils for prosecutors and for judges. So I think that we are always on the way looking for the best solution. So I think that it is very important what we heard, what the CCJs is doing, because probably also takes the experience and also practical experience in the different countries in Central and Eastern Europe. And I fully agree that in some countries, the role of Minister of Justice has been taken by the High Council of Judiciary. It was in Hungary, for example, when the Minister of Justice practically did not exist, because all competences just in the 90s has been taken by the High Council of Judiciary. And it was not the clear idea why. What was the reason? Because it was from the politicians, the power has been given to the corporatism. So this is a real question we have to answer. But first of all, I think what is important, and this has been exactly clearly answered by Anthony Hopper, that first of all we have to find the way how to select members to the High Council of Judiciary, because then it could open our way for better selection of judges. Because I fully agree with everything what you said, that the judges elect judges and there is a full protectionism and no clear rules how to elect judges when there is such a strong majority of judges elected by peers in the High Council of Judiciary.
Thank you very much. And we have one question left regarding the accountability of judiciary. So maybe Pavol would be happy to share his thoughts on the issue.
Thank you very much. I will be very brief. Kaka, I understand your point completely. In Slovakia, we don't even have a word which would translate the word accountability into Slovak. We only have responsibility, equivalent to it, which is different. So the misconception and misunderstanding about accountability is widespread in our region because we simply don't have the tradition of accountability of judiciary. So that's why we have to somehow rediscover it as such. In my perception, the judges should be accountable to society. And I think this is all I can say. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. So now we see that we are out of time. So the only thing left is to thank you, everyone of you.
Halyna, I'm sorry, Nino wanted to say something.
Just few words. If we have 1 minute.
I haven't checked, so please do that.
Okay, so I just want to say to Kaha that there is a separate chapter about legitimacy and accountability of the council in new opinion of CCJ. And there are some interesting provisions there. I will tell you very briefly that CCJ talks about constitutional legitimacy and functional legitimacy. And it says that functional legitimacy is based on the trust of the public created through excellent work, transparency, and accountability. And then it goes on to discuss accountability in more detail. And it says that accountability comprises judicial, explanatory, and punitive accountability. And it says that in a very brief way, I try to tell you about the provisions. So it says that council members, they should also adhere to ethical standards, and all members of the council, including judge members and non-judge members, can be also subject to disciplinary liability, just as judges are. And also explanatory accountability means that all decisions of the council should give reasons to the public for their decisions. So I think that there are some important aspects about accountability further elaborated in the new opinion, and this might be interesting in future to think of.
Thanks. It's very interesting to hear, since now currently in Ukraine we have a lot of discussion concerning the responsibility of the members of the High Council of Justice concerning like their decisions and whether they meet ethical standards. So I believe that the latest opinion of the Council of European Experts will be a very important argument in this discussion. So dear speakers, dear participants, thank you very much for joining us today. I am extremely grateful to our speakers for their wonderful interventions today. Thank you for your contribution to the search for solution for effective, independent, and accountable judicial governance in transitional democracies. Hope to join, to have you in our follow-up and in our further discussion. Thank you very much. Have a great Friday evening and weekend ahead. Wish you good luck and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.